Hey guys, wow, imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet cafe, sipping on your coffee, when the doors swing open and a group of uniformed officers rush in. Without warning, they start pulling people from their seats, demanding papers, searching for something or someone. This isn't a movie scene. This is reality. ICE raids are spiking at an alarming rate across the country, and for many, it's a nightmare they never thought would become their truth. You probably won't survive this type of raid without being forever changed. Families are being ripped apart, children are left crying at bus stops, and the people in the community are left with only one haunting question. Who's really paying the price for this? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Post your location and local time in the comments, and let's connect and let's go on the journey of today's story together. It's not just a statistic. It's a real devastating consequence of an ongoing crisis. ICE raids are on the rise. In 2023, there were over 200,000 deportations, a spike that has sent shockwaves through immigrant communities. But it's not just about numbers. It's about the real human beings whose lives are torn apart in the blink of an eye. Today, we're going to follow the footsteps of families who are caught in this chaos. You see, each raid has its own story, and they all tell us something deeply troubling about where our nation is headed. Imagine being a parent, a sibling, or a child who wakes up to the sound of a door being kicked in, followed by agents demanding you go with them. For some, this is a reality they never thought they'd face. But now it's happening more often than you might believe, and it's affecting entire communities, not just individuals. The question is, how did we get here, and who exactly is paying the price for this escalation? The surge in ICE raids isn't a random occurrence. It's part of a broader, increasingly aggressive immigration policy that is reshaping the landscape of the United States. The numbers are staggering. In 2023 alone, ICE conducted over 100,000 raids, a 25% increase from the previous year. But this spike isn't just a result of more people crossing borders illegally. No, it's a reflection of an administration's commitment to a stricter enforcement strategy. For communities that are already marginalized, this wave of raids has created a culture of fear and uncertainty. It's no longer just about fear of deportation. It's about wondering if you'll even make it home tonight. In the past, ICE raids were somewhat rare. They were executed with clear targets, such as those with criminal records or those who were identified as threats. But as the numbers have surged, a chilling reality has unfolded. People who've been living in the U.S. for years, often with families, are now swept up in these raids. ICE isn't just rounding up criminals. They're raiding places of work, homes, and even churches where families seek sanctuary. And for what? The justification is simple: security. The reality? It's families being torn apart, workers being dragged away in front of their children, and communities left in pieces. Remember Maria? She worked as a janitor at a local hospital and had been living in the U.S. for over 10 years. Maria never thought she'd be a target of an ICE raid. But one afternoon, while grabbing a quick lunch during her shift, ICE came for her. They didn't give her a warning. They didn't give her a choice. And just like that, Maria's life was upended. Her kids, left at home, had no idea where their mother had gone. The hospital where she worked lost one of their most reliable staff members. And the community lost yet another family member to the unyielding grip of an enforcement policy that doesn't seem to care who gets caught in its path. The question is, what do these numbers really mean? Are we prioritizing security over the humanity of the people caught in the crossfire? And who exactly is paying the price for this? Maria's story isn't unique. It's a reflection of the growing trend that's sweeping through immigrant communities in America, one raid at a time. After being detained, Maria's children were left to fend for themselves, unsure of when or if they would see their mother again. But this is just one story in the sea of countless others. The terrifying reality is that Maria wasn't alone. Her story is echoed in households across the country, where families live in constant dread of ICE coming through their doors at any moment. Think about it. One minute, she's just another mother trying to provide for her kids, a job she's done for years without issue. The next minute, she's handcuffed, detained, and on the fast track to deportation with no real recourse, no warning, no plan for her children. The implications ripple through not only her life, but the lives of those who depend on her. Families are torn apart, often without a moment's notice. Maria wasn't arrested in some obscure, forgotten part of the country. She was in a city that's supposed to represent the American dream, the promise of safety, opportunity, and family. But in that moment, it wasn't about her humanity. It wasn't about her role in her community. It was simply about one thing: enforcement. The cost of this escalation falls not on the shoulders of politicians or the ones making decisions from behind their desks. No, the cost is paid by people like Maria, hard-working, dedicated individuals who have made lives for themselves in the U.S., only to see it all come crashing down in a split second. This isn't just about statistics or policies. It's about the toll on real human beings. People like Maria and her family are forced to navigate an unpredictable and often hostile system that leaves them vulnerable. No matter how much they contribute to society, it doesn't seem to matter when ICE knocks at the door. These raids don't just tear families apart, they send a message to entire communities. No one is safe. ICE's actions are far more than just isolated incidents. They're part of a larger, troubling trend. Over the past few years, there's been a dramatic rise in the number of people arrested and deported. In 2023 alone, ICE made 100,000 arrests, a startling number that is part of a broader strategy by the U.S. government to enforce immigration laws more aggressively. But what does that really mean for the people involved? It's easy to look at these numbers as just another statistic, but behind every single arrest, there's a life turned upside down. These aren't just illegal immigrants. They're fathers, mothers, workers, students, and neighbors. Consider the percentage of those arrested in these raids who have no criminal record. The latest reports from the Migration Policy Institute reveal that nearly 72% of individuals detained by ICE in the last year had no prior criminal history. Instead of rounding up dangerous criminals or bad hombres, the agency is pulling in people who are simply trying to survive. Many of them are caught in this web due to minor violations like expired visas or paperwork errors. Things that don't make them criminals, but rather victims of a bureaucratic system gone wrong. But ICE isn't just targeting people who fall through the cracks. They're also raiding places that should offer safety and sanctuary. Churches, schools, even hospitals. And why? Because they can. In 2023, it was reported that ICE conducted a raid on a church in Chicago, an institution that had publicly declared its commitment to providing sanctuary for undocumented individuals. The raid left the community in shock. The victims, whose only crime was seeking protection under the law, were taken away in handcuffs, and the message was clear: no one is safe. When you think about it, what does this say about the values of a nation that prides itself on being a beacon of freedom and opportunity? When the numbers are stacked up, the results are undeniable. ICE raids are disproportionately affecting innocent families, many of whom are simply trying to build better lives. So, who exactly is paying the price for these raids? It's certainly not the ones who are making the laws. It's the families, workers, and communities caught in the crossfire. Is it all worth it? The ethical debate surrounding ICE raids is one that's growing louder by the day. On one side, proponents argue that the purpose of these raids is to uphold the rule of law, to ensure that those who have entered the country unlawfully face the consequences. They claim it's about protecting American jobs, safeguarding national security, and maintaining order. After all, isn't it necessary to enforce the law for the sake of the greater good? But let's take a moment to reflect on the real cost. Is it truly justice to tear apart families who have been living in the U.S. for years, sometimes even decades? Is it acceptable to deport someone who has no criminal record simply because of a mistake made in paperwork or an expired visa? Is it justifiable to break down doors in the middle of the night, grab a mother from her children, and send her halfway across the world? These are the real questions we need to answer when it comes to the ethics of these raids. The human impact is undeniable. Children are left without their parents. The mental and emotional toll on families is incalculable. Workers who have contributed to society are suddenly disposable, their futures erased in a single raid. And let's not forget the communities that suffer when their members are forcibly removed. These families aren't just a statistic. They are the lifeblood of neighborhoods, schools, and local businesses. When they're taken away, the entire community feels the effects. But there's another side to this debate. Some argue that these raids are a necessary evil, an unfortunate but unavoidable consequence of maintaining national security and enforcing immigration laws. They claim that allowing undocumented individuals to remain in the U.S. undermines the system and creates a breeding ground for lawlessness. There's a logic to this perspective. After all, laws must be enforced, and everyone must be held accountable. So, which side is right? Is it more ethical to prioritize the rule of law or the human rights of those caught in the system? Can we find a middle ground where families aren't torn apart and people aren't treated as disposable? As we face the ongoing reality of these ICE raids, it's clear that we need to confront these difficult questions head on. The stakes are too high to ignore. The impact of ICE raids is not just felt by the immediate families who are directly affected. It ripples through communities, changing the very fabric of daily life. Take the story of Hector, an immigrant from El Salvador, who had been living in the U.S. for over 15 years. Hector had a stable job at a local grocery store, was raising 2 children, and had built a life that many would envy. That was until the day ICE stormed through the doors of his workplace, arrested him, and sent him to a detention facility. What followed was devastating. Hector's family, now without the income he provided, struggled to make ends meet. His children were forced to cope with the trauma of losing their father, unsure if they would ever see him again. The store, where he had worked for years, found itself short-handed, and the entire community felt the absence of the kind-hearted man who had contributed so much to the local economy. But Hector wasn't just a statistic. His deportation didn't just affect his immediate family. It affected the entire neighborhood. It affected the people he had worked with, the customers he had served, and the schools his children attended. It's easy to forget that when ICE raids like this happen, they don't just tear apart one family. They leave an entire network of people with empty spaces where once there was life, stability, and hope. This isn't just an isolated case. It's happening across the nation. Entire communities are living in constant fear, unsure when the next raid will strike. Children are growing up in a state of anxiety, with parents living in constant terror of being separated. Families are being ripped apart for reasons that seem less and less justifiable. When we ask, who's paying the price? It's not just the individuals detained by ICE. It's entire communities that are paying the price of a broken, often cruel immigration enforcement system. These raids do nothing to make us safer. In fact, they do the opposite. They create distrust, fear, and division, and they harm the very fabric of society. The real price of these raids is seen in the faces of the children left behind, the businesses that lose valuable workers, and the communities that are shattered by the absence of their members. What have we become? The escalating ICE raids force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the values we hold as a nation. We pride ourselves on being a country of opportunity, a place where families can seek refuge and find new hope. But these raids paint a very different picture, one where laws trump human dignity and the government systematically dehumanizes entire populations in the name of security. It forces us to ask, when did we stop seeing these families as human beings? When did we start believing that laws are more important than lives? As you reflect on the stories of Maria, Hector, and countless others, it's hard not to feel disillusioned. These individuals didn't come to the U.S. seeking to break the law. They came in search of a better life for themselves and their children, hoping to escape the violence, poverty, and instability that plagued their home countries. They worked, contributed to their communities, and for all intents and purposes, became part of the fabric of the nation. Yet in the eyes of the law, they were never truly seen as part of the American family. We've heard the arguments. ICE raids are necessary to protect national security, to maintain the rule of law, and to prevent future crimes. But how do we reconcile that with the human cost? When we allow laws to separate children from their parents, or when we deport people who have lived here for decades and built meaningful lives, we're not just upholding the law, we're abandoning our basic moral responsibilities. At what point do we ask ourselves, what kind of nation are we becoming? How much longer will we stand by and watch as families are torn apart, communities are broken, and real people suffer in silence? The message that these raids send is clear. Your worth is defined by a piece of paper, not your humanity. Is that the kind of country we want to be? These questions are difficult, but they're necessary. The truth is, every ICE raid isn't just a failure of immigration policy. It's a failure of our collective conscience. The power to change this crisis is in your hands. While it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such widespread injustice, the truth is that your voice, your actions, and your support can make a significant difference. You may think that the situation is too big, too complex, or that you're just one person, but when enough people speak up, when enough people stand together, real change is possible. It's not just about sharing these stories or showing empathy for those who have suffered. It's about taking action. It's about using your voice to advocate for policy change, to support organizations working on the front lines of this battle, and to challenge the system that continues to treat human lives as disposable. We are at a pivotal moment in history where our collective decision to act or remain silent will determine the future of countless families. So, what can you do? First, make your voice heard. Speak out against the cruelty of these raids. Call your representatives. Demand that immigration policies prioritize human dignity over political agendas. Share the stories of those who have been affected by ICE raids, whether it's on social media, with friends, or within your community. The more people who understand the devastating impact of these policies, the greater the chance we have to make a change. But don't stop there. Support organizations like the ACLU, the Marshall Project, and other groups that fight tirelessly for the rights of immigrants and families affected by ICE's actions. Your donations, time, and energy can help create real change. The fight for justice is long, but it's worth it. Finally, educate yourself and those around you about the true costs of ICE raids. Understand the emotional, social, and economic toll they take on individuals and communities. The more we understand, the better equipped we are to push back against the policies that tear families apart. We can't undo the harm that has already been done, but we can fight for a future where no family has to live in fear of a knock on the door. Share this story. Take action. Together, we can demand that America be a place that values people, not just policies.